episode of the Sports Break here on RVNTV.tv. I'm your host, Renee Washington, and today we have a guest, well, not in the studio. He's actually down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Andrew Lopez, the LSU beat writer. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going today?
Glad you could join us. Now, we have talked on this show about Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma, everything that's going on, and even J.J. Watt being able to raise now over $37 million in hurricane efforts. And you actually talked to me before the show and a little while back about how you have experience with hurricanes. You were down in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit, correct?
Right. I'm from New Orleans, born and raised. I spent 29 years of my life down there, and I think the only time I wasn't there was when I had to evacuate Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. And as hurricanes Harvey and Irma were hitting, it brought back a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, right, where I didn't necessarily. It was flashbacks almost, and my family lost their house in Katrina. A lot of my family members actually lost their house, almost all of them, in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was we had 4 to 6 feet of water in the house, or
right,
my grandpa had 16 feet of water in his house. It was all the way up to the roof. So
jeez.
I actually got out and I went to Houston before the storm hit. But my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, my cousin, a whole bunch of people in my family were stuck in New Orleans, and they kind of stayed here, and that was a big deal. And so as people in Houston were stuck in the city, it kind of was one of those things where I was getting a lot of those bad flashbacks of trying to call my dad and
right,
water rushing into the house and things like that. So for me, it was a bit of an ordeal, and I understand what the people in Houston and Florida with Irma are going through right now.
Yeah. Now from that, you actually moved to work with the Times-Picayune, and you are now the LSU beat writer. And so that the hurricane, for as awful as it was, kind of transitioned you into the next step of your life. Talk to me about that process.
Yeah, it was crazy when so I graduated from Loyola in New Orleans. So again, I went to college there. I never really left the city, but I was in college at the time, and something that's, I guess, not typical for sports writers in a sense is I got my break with the Picayune because of all of this. And the Picayune's a major newspaper in the New Orleans area, and so as a college kid, you're not expecting to write for them right away. You think you have to go to a smaller market or something like that. But for me, when we got back into New Orleans in August of 2006, back when the prep season was starting up again, the Picayune had lost a lot of their stringers for prep football games. And I had a professor at Loyola who was good friends with the assistant sports editor at the time, and he's like, hey, do you have any young guys, any kids, any students that would just like to write prep games? And my professor at the time, Les East, who is now writing for us again, kind of funny, but he gave me a call, and he's like, hey, would you want to go write for the Times-Picayune and cover prep games? And at this time, I'm 19 years old. I'm going into my junior year, and I was like, wait a second, you like the Picayune, like you want them to? They're gonna pay me to do prep games? I was like, yeah, I'm in. And it opened a door that normally wouldn't have been open for me. And from there, I kind of got some trust within that company and worked my way up and kind of got to where I am now.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, it just is amazing because another thing that we talk a lot about on the show is just how your path can take you in unexpected directions, and there's like no one right way. There's not one right way or one specific way to go about getting to where you want to get to. And for you as a writer, that's something you dreamed about, and it happened early on. And today you're still able to cover LSU, and we do have to talk about LSU. So you are covering the football team right now, who just came off a pretty disappointing loss, losing by 30 points to Mississippi State. We talked about college football before, and that's your bread and butter, as you say. How disappointing is it for you as someone that has covered LSU and actually even grown up around LSU football and in that area your entire life to see the way their season is going so far?
It wasn't a great start, obviously. This is a team that had some high expectations under first-year coach Ed Ogeron, who's a local guy. He's from about an hour and a half drive away down to La Rose, Louisiana. So He's a local guy. He's about as local as it gets. If you've ever heard him talk, you understand he is Louisiana.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of LSU fans were upset the way, not necessarily at the loss itself against Mississippi State, but I'd say how it happened. A 37-7 loss in Starkville. Nothing seemed to go right. This new offense that everybody's been talking about that was supposed to kind of change how the team looked, and it was different from with the past. It didn't look that great. The defense, for the first time, only the second time under Dave Aranda in 15 games, gave up more than 21 points, and they ended up giving up to 37, obviously. So it was a bad day, and I think the only thing for LSU fans that they're kind of hanging their hat on is that basically, they were bad in all areas. They were bad on offense. They were bad on defense. They were bad on special teams. So for them, I think it's one of those deals where it's a situation where everything is fixable, everything is correctable, but it was still a disappointing loss, no matter what, to start the season, or to start conference play, I should say, starting the SEC. They get a chance to kind of turn it around this week against Syracuse. Syracuse is coming to Baton Rouge.
Right.
And I know that the Cuse is trying to prepare for this Baton Rouge humidity by not practicing indoors all week, which that's a smart move.
I guess so. Well, we will actually get more into SEC football when we get back from this break. Andrew, thank you. We'll be right back after this quick break. You guys don't go too far.
Didn't know, couldn't see what was around the corner from me. Let's go. Check me out, my legs are moving. Hands real smooth, gotta keep it moving. Take it fast, take it slow. Shake it all day, come on, let's go. Can't get enough of these crazy moves. Slide on by, now that's so smooth. Throw your hands up in the air. Bounce on down, down your hair. You stop, now that's real nice. Come on, get loose. Come on, let's go.
La Esperanza Mexican Restaurant and Bar, the best authentic Mexican restaurant in South Jersey. Your friends and family will enjoy the fun and the food, like our staple guacamole, tamales, and ceviche. Our weekday lunch special is just $7.99. We also offer Saturday and Sunday brunch. Enjoy the largest selection of tequilas in South Jersey, Mexican beers, bottle and draft beers, fresh margaritas, and daily beer and margarita specials. La Esperanza Mexican Restaurant and Bar, family owned and operated since 2002.
Hi, I'm Becky.
And I'm Eric.
And this is Cooking Uncorked.
It is.
It is. And you can check us out Mondays at 10:30.
10:30 every Monday.
See you there. Got a quarter?
Welcome back to the Sports Break here on RBNTV.TV. I'm your host, Renee Washington, and if you missed the first segment of the show for whatever crazy reason, we have Andrew Lopez in the studio via Skype with us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's an LSU beat writer down with the Times-Picayune, and he covers LSU football, baseball, basketball. So why not talk about college football today? So Andrew Lopez just a little bit got into LSU's disappointing loss against Mississippi State, and it's still early. They're 2-1 right now. So Andrew, what will it take for them to be able to, get back on track and bounce back from that tough loss they just had?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't like how things look for Syracuse this weekend. So you're gonna have a really mad LSU team coming in to Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. LSU knows that it's little things that they need to fix, execution problems,
right.
Gap issues where Mississippi State was just able to kind of outsmart them a little bit. And I talked to a couple players on the defense, and they both told me it wasn't like they didn't know what was going to happen. Everything that was going to happen, they were told this is going to happen. They just didn't execute. And for them, I think they take a little bit of solace in that, in the fact that it's a situation where it's all fixable. So they're going to come out a little fired up this week. They had a couple bad days of practice going into that Mississippi State game, but I think what you're going to see this week is some guys that are ready to play and are going to be fired up. They're playing in front of their home crowd, and I think they're going to have to make a statement to kind of calm some people down a little bit. And I don't think it looks good for the Orange that way.
No, it's never good to be the team that's playing someone coming off of a disappointing loss when they really should not have lost the way they did. Now, we cannot go without talking about some of the other teams in college football, especially Alabama. They are looking very good so far this season at 3-0. And who is going to be able to beat them? I mean, we talked about LSU. I don't know how they match up against Alabama, but who's going to be able to take down the top dogs in Alabama?
I think the only team that can beat Alabama, honestly, is probably Alabama. And I mean that in a way of it's, you obviously you look at Clemson again, they're the number 2 team in the country, and we're on a collision course for another Alabama-Clemson national championship game. But for the most part, what I think I see is an Alabama team that is once again really, really good. Obviously, Nick Saban constantly is getting these 4- and 5-star recruits down there to Tuscaloosa, and I don't think it's LSU's year to stop a 5 or 6 game losing streak against the Crimson Tide. I think it's one of those things where if Alabama is going to lose, they're going to lose because they're going to beat themselves. They're going to make mistakes. Jalen Hurts is going to their outstanding sophomore quarterback. He's going to have a game where he looks like a sophomore again.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the injuries on defense start to catch up to him a little bit, but for the most part, this is Alabama's season, and it's going to continue to be Alabama's season.
Yeah, and it's tough because, again, coming into this year, teams had to kind of match the Crimson Tide. They had to regroup and be able to find a way to get, whether it's guys coming in, transfers, underclassmen, or getting those upperclassmen to step up to be able to compete with them. Auburn, you talk about LSU, you talk about Clemson, but it seems as though so far the other teams in the SEC kind of dropped the ball, literally and figuratively, and they're not playing as well as they need to be.
It's the best year in the SEC so far. You look at Alabama is obviously at the top of the polls. They're the toppest team in the country, no matter what poll you look at. And I think you're starting after that. It's you look at Georgia and Mississippi State and Florida and Auburn, and all of those teams seem to have some sort of blemish on their record or resume where no one looks to really be able to challenge them. This isn't one of those years where you have 2 and 3 teams in the top 10 in the SEC. It's just Alabama right now, and LSU's clinging on in the bottom of the top 25. So that's, again, why I think if you're going to beat Alabama in the SEC, you have a long road ahead. So to me, Alabama doesn't fall until they get to the college football playoff, if they fall.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. It could be, again, an Alabama run to the championship. But we do have an area right now that's really doing well in college football. That's Oklahoma as a whole. So Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And for you, more Oklahoma State, I think, seems to be surprising you in how they're playing so far. I mean, they're really, for a number 12 team, they're playing very well so far this season. What are you seeing from Oklahoma State so far this season?
Offense. Offense.
Yeah.
And I think after that, it's also offense, where you have a lot of these guys it's a system that fits the right way. And you see a guy like Mason Rudolph, a big guy who at one time was trying to come to LSU, and actually LSU picked this guy Brandon Harris to kind of be their quarterback instead of him. Brandon is now a transfer. He's at UNC as a graduate transfer, but kind of makes you wonder for LSU fans what would have happened if you had Mason Rudolph. And there's another guy on that team that is named Jalen McCleskey, who is a wide receiver. He had 3 touchdowns this past week, 160 yards. And he, to me, is one of those guys where it goes to show you that in college football, and really in recruiting in general, whether it's college football, basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever sport you choose, it's all about picking the school that fits you. Yeah. This was a guy who didn't necessarily he wasn't going to go to Oklahoma State. He was kind of looking at different spots, but some bigger schools came on him late, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to stick with this offense that works for me, and kind of turn down some other things at the time. And I think every time I see Jalen thriving in this system, I think it all comes down to evaluation. That I've seen guys go to LSU that maybe shouldn't have gone to LSU, and they go to LSU because, you know, LSU is the big state school and everybody wants to be at LSU. But in the end, you really just want to be at a school that is going to help you grow. And I see that with Jalen, and it just kind of makes me smile every time to know that he made the right choice. And they're an offense where I think they can beat anybody in the country. And I think once they get to Oklahoma, I think they could beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And possibly be this dark horse team that sneaks into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you make in general about college sports, is understanding what fits you, not what would look good. You know, you can go to a big program and not play or not do well or not develop as well as you should, or you can maybe be a bigger fish in a smaller pond and go to an Oklahoma State and be a part of that program, turning around and being successful. And you also mentioned Mason Rudolph, who we're actually going to talk about right after this break. So we have to break real quick, but when we get back, we will talk about some phenomenal quarterbacks, as we, as always in college football, have to look at the Heisman Watch. So don't go too far. We'll be right back.
For your product that you'd like to share with our viewers as a guest on the Morning Coffee Show, please contact us at info@radiovisionnetwork.com.
Today's show has been sponsored by More Than Gifts. Come see our new location in Marlton, New Jersey. Not just gifts, but more.
Didn't know, couldn't see what was around the corner from me. Let's go. Check me out, my legs are moving. Hands real smooth, gotta keep it moving. Take it fast, take it slow. Shake it all day, come on, let's go. Can't get enough of these crazy moves. Slide on by, now that's so smooth. Throw your hands up in the air. Bounce on down and down your hair. You stop, now that's real nice. Come on, get loose. Come on, let's go.
La Esper.
Welcome back to the Sports Break here on RVNTV.tv. I'm your host, Renee Washington, and joining us today is guest Andrew Lopez from down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's a beat writer for LSU. So we've been talking college football all morning. We talked about LSU, of course. We talked about Alabama and Oklahoma State. And now we can't go without talking about the Heisman Watch. Top quarterbacks in college football as of now, who we think is going to be the one that, in the end of the season, is the Heisman winner. And we have Lamar Jackson, who won last year. We have other big names like Mason Rudolph, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold. So, Andrew, for you, out of these top 5 quarterbacks that are right now in the running for being the Heisman Trophy winner, who do you predict is going to be the one, or the top 2 at the end of the season, I should say?
It may come down to those 2 Oklahoma guys that we were talking about before. I think one, you're going to have a guy, Mason Rudolph, we can continue talking about him, who's going to continue to put up these numbers. I'm looking at some of the numbers he's had. He's had almost a 500-yard performance already on his resume. He's not going to get some of the big name games, but if he can get into that Oklahoma game and lead the Cowboys against the Sooners, that's going to go a long way in helping him.
Right.
Mayfield is going to be probably the favorite right now for a lot of people, because he's already had his statement game, so much that he planted his flag in the Ohio State after that game, which kind of definitely cemented him as the favorite so far. He led his team against a top 2 team in the country, beat him at their place. He has Oklahoma sitting pretty number 2 or number 3 in the country, depending on what poll you're looking at. So Baker Mayfield's a guy who, and he's just a great story, a former walk-on at Texas Tech, went getting to Oklahoma. So the fact that he's even in a Heisman race as a former walk-on, he has a story with him. So I think that helps. It helps when you have a story behind you. After them, it comes Lamar Jackson, and I think you have a guy in Lamar Jackson who obviously he won the Heisman last year, and it's tough to win it twice. It's only been done once in history. Archie Griffin did it for Ohio State in the 70s. So for Lamar, he's going to have a better season than last year, and he's already had a bad game against Clemson, so he's going to have to step up a little bit.
Right.
Then you move to Josh Rosen at UCLA, who's been a guy who people have been clamoring about for a long time and about how he could help change that Bruins program. I think he's already got close to 1,300 yards passing this year. So he's a guy who a lot of NFL scouts are already looking at, and he feels like he could be the guy. And then you got Sam Darnold, who has had a lot of talk about possibly going to the Jets or the Jets tanking for a guy like him.
Right.
He's your prototypical guy, and his USC escaped that win that went on Saturday night. They got a win against Texas in overtime. So as long as USC keeps winning, Sam Darnold is going to be the guy who kind of takes the reins and could squeeze himself into that race with that West Coast vote.
Yeah, and with the run for being a Heisman Trophy winner, every single statistic, every interception, every pass completion, every single thing that the player does is under the microscope. So how much of that is affected? I mean, you talk about having a great story. How much of that is influenced by fans' viewership and how much fans tend to like a player more than another player? That player that brings fans to their feet and makes them excited to tune in every game and tweet about them and whatever else. How much of that plays a role into this Heisman watch?
I'll tell you what, to think about that, you go back a couple of years ago when Manti Te'o was a thing at Notre Dame. And one of the things about Manti Te'o was he had, at the time, what he thought was his girlfriend who was dying of this heart disease and all this kind of stuff. And he was a story. Now, of course, that ended up being not true. And there's been no evidence that Manti knew it wasn't true, but still it helped to build his story up and help with his candidacy, if you will. So I think a lot of times that does help is to have a story, and obviously you have that in Baker Mayfield. So a lot of other times I think it's possible that it isn't just about the numbers. And you can throw for 300 yards and rush for 100 yards in a game like Lamar did a couple weeks ago, but having something to go along with that helps, I think, in every scenario.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we are sadly running out of time here, but it's great that your story of your, everything that you dealt with Hurricane Katrina brought you to this point to now be able to tell the story of LSU football players and be able to watch firsthand what's going on in college football as these quarterbacks are making their run towards possibly being a Heisman Trophy winner, as in Alabama's making a run towards possibly being a college football champion again. So Andrew, thank you for joining us on the show today. It's really been a pleasure. I wish we could talk for like another 30 minutes. But I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show today. So thank you.
No problem.
And for everyone else, as always, you can watch us here on rvntv.tv every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 9 a.m. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.